In the great ledger of the cosmos, humanity was not so much a footnote as it was a smudge. It wasn't that the universe was indifferent to humans. It had plenty of planets to ignore. No, the universe seemed actively irritated, like someone discovering a raccoon rifling through their neatly sorted trash bins. Only this raccoon had figured out how to open the liquor cabinet, start a fire, and build a warp drive out of blender parts and duct tape. 53 standard cycles ago, the Galactic Confederation discovered Earth. The consensus among the elder species was immediate, quaint, but problematic. Since then, humanity had proven itself a recurring administrative migraine. They'd arrived at faster-than-light travel, using what Confederation scientists described as the most unnecessarily chaotic and potentially catastrophic method possible. Humans called it the allure drive. Everyone else referred to it as that terrifying space-time blender the monkeys built. But to everyone's dismay, it worked. And now, the Confederation had to deal with yet another bipedal mammalian species, this one armed with a smile, a clipboard, and an irritating tendency to survive things they absolutely shouldn't. The diplomatic exchange hall on Proxima Station shimmered with artificial polish, the kind that screamed, "Important people will be judging our interior decorating choices." Representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations mingled, floated, or oozed through the grand chamber, each carrying the weight of their evolutionary pride. The lighting had been calibrated to accommodate 16 different visual spectrums, which meant everyone looked awful in uniquely diverse ways, a minor win for interspecies equality. Near the center of the hall, a gelatinous diplomat from the methane-breathing Bovian collective burbled passionately. "And so I informed the Coscathic ambassador," it intoned, bubbles rippling through its gooey mass, "that if they truly wished for mining rights in the Epsilon cluster, they would require 3 additional interpretive dance performances to justify their emotional claim to mineral extraction." Standing nearby, glass in hand, the human ambassador smiled professionally. Internally, they were calculating how many drinks would be considered culturally respectful versus professionally irresponsible. This, after all, was diplomacy. Smiling through nonsense while trying to prevent interstellar war. Human diplomats had perfected what veterans now called the nod and plate, an ancient Earth technique involving the exact facial expression used in parent-teacher conferences when being told your child had a lot of potential, but also frequent outbursts. "Fascinating," the ambassador said, with the practiced tone of someone deeply skilled in sounding intrigued while mentally reciting sandwich recipes. The Confederation's emphasis on cultural expression as a component of resource allocation is enlightening. What the ambassador didn't say was that Earth's general opinion of Confederation bureaucracy landed somewhere between tax season, the DMV, and a particularly insufferable book club. But humanity had learned a crucial rule. When in a galaxy of technologically superior species, smile and pretend their systems make sense. And so the dance continued, until the Verloc Dominion ruined everything with a single announcement. Without warning, the holographic display at the center of the hall flickered to life, scattering conversations and cocktail spills in equal measure. Several drinks hit the floor. One methane breather emitted a startled puff of flammable gas. Then came the image. A towering insectoid figure, chitinous and regal, its mandibles twitching with what passed for glee in its species. High Commander Zarax of the Verloc Dominion had arrived. "Attention! Civilized beings of the Confederation!" the commander declared, voice distorted through a poorly translated filter that could not mask the sharp clicking undertones. "The Dominion is pleased to report the successful pacification of the unruly human settlements in the Teti system. Their pitiful defenses were insufficient, as expected of such a primitive species." Silence followed. Even the Bovian diplomat stopped bubbling, All eyes, optical, sensory, and otherwise, turned toward the human ambassador. They didn't flinch. They simply adjusted their cuffs, stepped forward, and spoke in a voice that carried clear and cold through the room. "Excuse me. Could you clarify what you mean by pacified?" Zarax's compound eyes gleamed. "Is the human's translation matrix malfunctioning? We have neutralized your outposts, removed them. They were impeding resource development, territories beneficial to advanced civilizations." "Those," the ambassador replied, still smiling, "were civilian colonies, with families, with children, over 30,000 people." Zarax waved a clawed appendage dismissively. "Unfortunate. But the Dominion filed Form CR 7291B for intent to utilize underdeveloped regions. Approval was granted by the Resource Management Committee. Last cycle." A long, spindly Flexarn bureaucrat shuffled forward, clutching 12 data tablets in its many limbs. "Actually," it wheezed, "notification was properly delivered to Earth's designated processing node. Per Confederation Protocol 947, paragraph 32, subparagraph Q, all member species must check their communication hubs every 73 standard hours." The human's expression did not change. "So, you sent us a form buried under 177,000 others. Gave us 3 Earth days to notice, before wiping out a colony." "Procedure is procedure," the Flexarn replied, approximating a sniff with its spiracles. The ambassador looked around. Many representatives were nodding. Bureaucracy had spoken. But something shifted. 53 years of smiling, of attending cultural sensitivity seminars, of pretending alien puns were funny, of filling out triplicate forms that vanished into black hole inboxes, it all crystallized into something sharp, cold, final. "This is the 3rd human colony you've pacified in the past 2 months, the ambassador said. "And each time, you've hidden behind paperwork. Each time, our complaints have been lost or delayed." Zarax's mandibles clicked rapidly, amused. "Perhaps your species should learn to navigate civilized systems more effectively. Evolution favors the administratively competent." The human reached into a pocket and withdrew a small device. One press. A soft beep. "Ambassador," came a voice from the device. "Earth Defense Command. Authorization code received. Contingency Barbarossa confirmed." The hall froze. Even the Jovian diplomat in a gas-filled suit stopped rippling. "What was that?" someone asked. "A primitive catharsis ritual?" another offered. The human smiled. A different smile, one that made ancient species reconsider their body language. "That," the ambassador said, "was me informing my government that the time for playing nice is over." For exactly 45 seconds, the Proxima Diplomatic Exchange Hall held its collective breath. Species who had never evolved lungs still somehow managed to do it. Every monitor flickered. Every secure channel cracked open like an overripe fruit. The station's communication systems, a labyrinthine tangle of protocol and encryption, were overridden by something far cleaner, far sharper. A human face appeared on every display. Stern, calm. "Admiral Chang, Earth Defense Fleet." "To all Confederation species," she began, "the destruction of human colonies constitutes an act of war under both Earth and Confederation law, Section 1293, Paragraph 7, for those who appreciate citations. We have attempted resolution through your channels. You failed to act. Therefore, as of this moment, Earth invokes Article 17 of the Confederation Charter, the right of proportionate response." A pause. Eyes turned to the Flexarn bureaucrat, now pale and twitching. "There is no Article 17, it stammered. "I've memorized all 9,347 articles. I would know." "Check the appendices," the human ambassador said calmly, sipping what remained of a mediocre alien cocktail. The ones Earth added when we joined. The ones you all skipped reading because, and I quote, "What could primitives possibly contribute to galactic law?" The screens flickered again. Admiral Chang's face vanished, replaced by a live feed from Confederation monitoring satellites near the Verloc home system. The barren, crater-pocked moon of Vrelo Prime filled the display, silent, lifeless, until it wasn't. There was no beam, no explosion, no dramatic charge-up of energy. One moment the moon was whole, the next, half of it was gone. A perfect hemisphere, clean-cut like a cosmic scalpel had sliced it away, was simply missing. The exposed interior glowed cherry red, molten rock sizzling against the vacuum of space. In the hall, not a sound stirred. 1,000 limbs froze mid-twitch. Eyes, stalks, antennae, all fixed on the display with mounting horror. The Verloc commander's mandibles clattered in disbelief. "Absurd!" it hissed. "No known technology could... This must be falsified. Some optical illusion." "It's real," the human ambassador said softly. "And that wasn't even a weapon. That was a demonstration device. The real ones are less polite." The screens changed again. A schematic of Earth Defense Fleet ships now orbiting every Confederation founding species homeworld. The message required no translation. "You are no longer safe." The silence broke like glass. The Arcturian Chancellor, ancient and wrinkled as a dried leaf, floated forward on his humming gravity disk. "Now, Ambassador, surely we can discuss this in good faith. Let's not be rash. Perhaps a committee, yes, a neutral review board, to evaluate the legality of Verloc resource claims." The human ambassador smiled again. Not the diplomatic smile, the other one. The kind that made creatures evolved from predators start scanning for exits. "With all due respect, Chancellor, which at this point is minimal, humanity has played by your rules. We filed your forms, laughed at your jokes, sat through your cultural awareness webinars. But let's be very clear. You've mistaken courtesy for weakness, patience for ignorance, restraint for inability." They stepped forward. The voice didn't rise, yet it echoed through the chamber like a closing door. "So here is Earth's final warning. Stop attacking our colonies or we stop pretending to be civilized." A ripple of nervous laughter tried to pass through the crowd, quickly strangled by the Verloc commander's arrogant retort. "What will you do, humans?" Zarak sneered. "Throw rocks at our battle cruisers?" Some diplomats chuckled, desperate for normalcy. The ambassador checked a small timepiece. "In approximately 20 seconds, they said, you'll receive your answer." The central holographic display hummed to life once more. This time, the feed showed a small human colony world in the Prune system, target of a newly launched Verloc attack fleet. 8 Annihilator-class dreadnoughts, their enormous profiles unmistakable, closed in with grim precision. The chamber erupted in alarm. "Those ships can level entire continents," a Rillian analyst cried. "Do you have anything defending that colony?" the Chancellor asked, voice cracking. The human checked their device. "Yes," they replied casually. "The fleet just arrived." The display zoomed in. One ship, small, compact, the size of a Confederation courier vessel. Confusion rolled through the chamber like fog. "That's it," the Verloc representative said, mandibles twitching with renewed confidence. "That's your mighty defense fleet?" The human shrugged. "We find overcompensation inelegant." The Verloc ships opened fire. Beams of radiant energy lanced through space, converging on the single human vessel in a dazzling display of annihilation. They missed. All of them. The human ship moved like water through fingers, impossibly fast, weaving through beams, skimming hulls, dodging projectiles with movements that violated at least 3 known laws of motion. "Impossible," the Rillian said. "They're executing micro-jumps in normal space. The energy demands are considerable," the ambassador agreed. If you're using standard drives, we stopped doing that about 200 Earth years ago. On the screen, the human vessel paused, perfectly centered amid the dreadnought formation. Tiny objects detached, barely visible. Missiles? The Jovian asked. Boarding pods, the human corrected. A stunned silence followed as the pods latched onto each dreadnought. Then, one by one, the Verloc warships shut down. No explosions, no firefights, just silence. What is happening? The Chancellor demanded. The ambassador held up a finger as if listening. The chamber's speakers crackled to life. This is Captain Reynolds of the EDF Tenacity? All Verloc dreadnoughts secured? Minimal casualties? Crews placed in stasis? Vessels to be returned after military systems are stripped for analysis. Tenacity out. The display faded to black. In the hall, 37 civilizations stared at a smiling human, unsure whether they were witnessing the rise of an ally or the awakening of something far older and more dangerous. Our species has a different philosophy, the ambassador said, calm again. You build to destroy. We build to win. There's a difference. The Arcturian chancellor floated closer, his parchment-thin face drawn and pale. These capabilities represent a significant shift in power. Only for those who meant to harm us, the ambassador replied. For everyone else, nothing's changed. 3 standard days after what Confederation media now carefully called the lunar incident, the Emergency Council convened in a high-security chamber carved into the crystalline heart of the conquered spire. The walls shimmered with subdermal shielding. The air tasted sterilized. The atmosphere, despite its controlled composition, felt like a collective-held breath. When the human ambassador entered, every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Appendages withdrew. Gas-filled suits subtly shrank. Even species without a nervous system somehow conveyed anxiety. The ambassador walked to their seat at the massive quartz-like table with unhurried ease, brushing imaginary lint from their lapel. As they sat, the representatives on either side shifted their hover chairs a conspicuous meter away. The Arcturian chancellor, ancient and still slightly translucent with age, broke the silence. Well, he said, voice papery and brittle, this is certainly an unprecedented situation. The Verloc Dominion's new representative, a far more subdued figure than Zirax, clicked his mandibles nervously. The Dominion wishes to reevaluate our extraction priorities in human-occupied systems. The human smiled, lightly, not threatening, just disappointed. How magnanimous. And what of reparations? The ambassador added, tone sharpening. 30,000 lives lost? Families? Children? Will your reevaluation include compensation? The Verloc looked to the others. No one met his eyes. Allies were suddenly hard to find. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should begin with mutual de-escalation, some confidence-building measures. The human folded their hands. So you want us to stand down before you've acknowledged responsibility for mass civilian deaths? How very Verloc of you. The Chancellor raised his hands, trying to cool the temperature in the room. Let us begin with facts. The human demonstration was impressive, yet questions remain. Are we witnessing your full capability or an elaborate bluff? A Regalian analyst, blue-skinned and floating on a column of soft light, glided forward, its tentacles wrapped tightly around a glowing data sphere. Our scans indicate the lunar incident involved matter displacement, a method unknown to Confederation science. However, the energy signatures suggest a localized effect, not scalable for large engagements. The human ambassador gave a slow, amused nod. You're not wrong. And yet, you're so very wrong. They leaned forward, elbows on the table, expression void of malice, but also devoid of mercy. Do you know why we never revealed our true capabilities when we joined? It wasn't subterfuge or strategy. It was manners. The Regalian blinked, or did something equivalent. Manners. When you're invited to dinner, the ambassador continued, you don't begin by showing your host how easily you could burn down their house. It's impolite. A wave of discomfort passed through the chamber. But your technologies, how could we not detect them? The chancellor asked. Our protocols are exhaustive. Your protocols, the ambassador said, focus on propulsion, energy output, communications. You never thought to examine military history. You assumed primitives had nothing to teach you about war. An OS representative, armored in ceremonial bone plating, slammed a fist on the table. You deceived us! The human didn't flinch. Did we? We filed every form, attended every workshop, shared our breakthroughs in medicine, agriculture, climate reversal. They paused, voice cooling. We simply didn't offer what you never asked for. The chancellor's gravity disk hummed closer. Regardless, this escalation threatens the balance of the Confederation. The ambassador looked up, smile fading. Only for those who mistook our silence for weakness. A tense silence fell again, interrupted only by a soft chime. The ambassador glanced at their communicator. Their expression darkened. It appears, they said slowly, that the Verloc Dominion has just launched another fleet, this time targeting our colony in the Prune system. Gasps erupted. That's a direct violation of the ceasefire, barked the Jovian delegate. The Verloc representative sputtered. I received no notification of military operations. The human's smile returned. This time, it had teeth. How frustrating when communication fails through proper channels, isn't it? They turned to the council. Representatives, I suggest you direct your observation arrays toward the Prune system. What follows will be instructive. The chamber's central projector activated. On screen, 8 Verloc dreadnoughts, sleek and terrible, approached a small human colony world. They were massive, bristling with weaponry. Those are Annihilator-class warships, whispered the Rillian analyst. They're designed to reduce entire planets to molten slag. The human checked the time. Our defense will arrive. Now. One ship entered the system, small, nondescript. Laughter rippled through the chamber. That's your defense? The Verloc sneered. One ship? It's not the size of the dog in the fight, the ambassador said mildly, but the size of the fight in the dog. The translation software struggled with the idiom, resulting in a few confused beeps. On the screen, the human ship accelerated. The Verloc fleet opened fire. They missed, every beam, every shot. The human ship wove between the blasts like they were painted in slow motion, performing physics-defying maneuvers that should have shattered any known vessel. They're micro-jumping, cried the Rillian. In normal space. The power required is unimaginable, the human agreed, unless you stopped using conventional drives 200 years ago. The ship entered the fleet's formation. Tiny pods detached, one per dreadnought. Missiles? Asked the Althonian envoy. Boarding teams, the human said. We prefer conversations to explosions. The chamber watched in mute awe as the warships fell silent, one by one. Power systems cut, engines offline, weapon cores disengaged. A new voice filled the chamber. This is Captain Reynolds of the EDF Tenacity. All enemy vessels secured. No casualties reported. Crews placed in stasis for humane return. Weapon systems confiscated for inspection. Tenacity out. No one spoke. The human ambassador sat back, crossing their arms, finally relaxed. Your civilizations build weapons to destroy. We build them to control. That's the difference. They called it the Earth demonstration. Never the retaliation. Never the massacre. The Confederation needed to save face. even if everyone knew exactly what it was. A moment when the polite, agreeable species known as humans stopped being an afterthought and became a variable, the kind that rewrote equations. But as the council scrambled to assemble reparations, to patch a fractured peace with procedural duct tape, the Verloc Supreme Command made one final error. They launched a fleet, not at a colony, not at an outpost, but at Earth itself. The reasoning, as intercepted later through decrypted transmissions, was horrifyingly simple. If we destroy their homeworld, the colonies will surrender, regardless of their tricks. And so, 11 Verloc dreadnoughts exited hyperspace above the blue and green sphere known to its inhabitants as Earth, expecting confusion, fear, and disarray. They found nothing: no orbital defense platforms, no visible fleets, no weapon signatures, just a peaceful world spinning slowly, blissfully unaware. The Verloc commander believed this was confirmation of human bluff, of weakness. It was, instead, their final warning. In the council chamber, the live feed streamed directly from high-orbit surveillance stations. The Verloc ships formed into combat pattern Theta 9, charging weapons, scanning for hidden threats. "I don't see any defense systems," the OSS representative muttered. "Maybe they ran out of toys," another suggested. The human ambassador was sipping tea, calmly, with the same expression one might wear while waiting for a train that was always going to arrive. "You're not worried?" the chancellor asked. The ambassador glanced up. "I'm sipping tea." "So, no." On the screen, the Verloc dreadnoughts advanced, and then the sky turned against them. It started as a shimmer, then a flicker, then thousands, millions of glittering particles rising from Earth's upper atmosphere, swarming the Verloc ships like an ascending tide of light. A few of the dreadnoughts opened fire. Their weapons failed. Some ships tried evasive maneuvers. Their engines disengaged. Their navigational systems spun into holding loops. Within 3 minutes, the entire Verloc fleet was suspended, motionless in orbit. Hulls intact, crews untouched, weapons gone, sensors blind. The atmosphere rippled like a beast inhaling. In the council chamber, several delegates were visibly trembling. The Rillian analyst spoke, voice quiet. What are we seeing?" The ambassador took another sip. "That," they said, "is our planetary immune system." Gasps, clattering limbs. Someone dropped a translator unit. "Microscopic defense drones," the ambassador continued, "each one smaller than a bacterium, deployed automatically when an unauthorized object enters orbit." The Regalian analyst floated forward, blue skin pale. "But the energy requirements, the AI processing, this is impossible. How could such a system exist without detection?" The ambassador placed the teacup gently onto its saucer. "You keep asking the wrong question. We didn't develop this system while in contact with you. We built it long before." For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber sat suspended in a vacuum of realization. The Arcturian chancellor finally whispered, as if afraid of the answer. "Why? Why would you build something like that so advanced, so hidden? Who were you expecting to defend against?" The ambassador's gaze went distant. "Ourselves." A silence deeper than shock followed. "You see," they continued, "for most of our history, peace wasn't a given. It was an anomaly. We fought ourselves into near extinction more than once. We learned, hard, that peace isn't maintained by good intentions alone. Sometimes it must be secured by the credible threat of overwhelming response. We didn't hide our defenses out of fear. We hid them because you don't hand a loaded weapon to a stranger. It's not paranoia, it's survival." On the screen, the Verloc fleet began retreating, escorted by Earth's micro-drones like shameful guests being shown the door. The ambassador stood. "I think we can now resume negotiations. Topic 1. Cessation of hostilities. Topic 2. Reparations. Topic 3. Recognition of Earth's sovereign perimeter, including all current and future colonies. The Verloc representative did not speak. His mandibles were still. Stillness, for their species, meant submission. The Chancellor slowly nodded. "You have our attention." The ambassador smiled. "That's all we ever wanted." Outside, across the galactic networks, panic and speculation bloomed like solar flares. News anchors questioned everything. Military analysts rewrote decades of doctrine. Young civilizations watched old empires sweat. And buried deep in the archives of interstellar intelligence agencies, one phrase began appearing with alarming frequency. The humans were never weak. They were just polite. The conflict ended not with a treaty, but with a quiet, collective understanding. The humans had not conquered anyone. They had merely informed the galaxy what would happen if they were forced to. And the galaxy listened. For 6 standard months following the Earth demonstration, the Confederation underwent what historians would later call the shift. The bureaucracy remained. Some things, it seemed, were immortal, but its spine had bent. Protocols once sacred were re-examined. Committees that had met for centuries without conclusions suddenly discovered efficiency, because now, in every room, at every table, in every circular chamber of policy and power, there was a human, smiling, listening, writing nothing down, and somehow remembering everything. The Verloc, astonishingly, became Earth's most vocal advocates. Their new ambassador, a scarred veteran named Krexchal, was blunt to a fault. "They could have destroyed us," he told the Security Council in his first address. They didn't. Instead, they returned our soldiers alive with a note. Such restraint from such power, that is a species worth respecting. The note in question was 5 words long. "Next time, we won't wait." Krexchal had kept it framed in his chambers. When the Arcturian Chancellor formally acknowledged Earth's revised status, granting humans a permanent seat on the Security Council, his speech contained a rare, uncomfortable truth. "Our greatest failure," he said, "was not underestimating human technology. It was failing to understand that their civilization was not the result of evolutionary innocence, but of conscious restraint. They are not young. They are just finished with violence, for now." The human ambassador accepted the position with typical grace. They brought a gift, a terrarium, clear and simple. Inside, a single Earth rose, blooming with perfect symmetry, nestled beside a patch of stubborn thorned weeds. "Civilization and barbarism," the ambassador explained, placing it on the central table, "grow from the same soil. We simply choose which to water." A silence followed, deeper than diplomacy. The kind of silence that settles in a room when everyone realizes something far too late. The humans had been civilized by choice, but savagery had always remained available. Across the Confederation, shifts began. Species that once scoffed at human backward systems began studying Earth's conflict resolution models. Others sent delegations to observe human educational reform or crisis response teams. The joke subroutines in the universal translators, beloved by elder species, were quietly deactivated. No one wanted to misinterpret a human's tone again. And somewhere, in the quiet orbit of an uncolonized world, a single Earth Defense Fleet vessel sat cloaked in silence. Its name, Eidolon. Its orders, observe, watch, wait. A reminder to the stars that while humanity might never fire the first shot, they would absolutely fire the last. In the end, humanity never raised its voice. It never needed to. What it revealed was not overwhelming force, but the terrifying implication of what might lie beneath. And that was enough. Within a single cycle, the Confederation's tone had shifted from patronizing to cautious, from condescension to consultation. The word primitive stopped appearing in official documents. No one missed it. Earth's colonies were rebuilt, reparations flowed, And the forms, they were still there, but they started getting shorter. Humans never asked for dominance. They simply demanded respect, and having earned it the hard way, they never had to ask again. In the shadowed archives of the Galactic Strategic Council, a sealed report circulated in whispers. It was called The Polite Contingent, Psychological Assessment of Humanity. The conclusion was short. They smile, they adapt, they wait, but they do not forget, and they do not forgive quietly. Generations passed. Diplomatic simulations began, including Earth's response protocols as worst-case scenarios. Naval architects across the stars scrapped entire lines of warships that had suddenly become irrelevant. Galactic superpowers began training soldiers not to fire first, but to apologize faster. And still, Earth said little, shared freely, taught willingly, helped constantly. But behind every offer of medicine, technology, or peace was the unspoken reality. We could have burned everything down, and chose not to. In the gardens of Earth's embassy on Proxima Station, a young Regalian diplomat once asked the human ambassador a question that had lingered in the minds of thousands. "Why didn't you strike first?" The ambassador paused, setting aside their datapad. "Because that's not who we wanted to be," they said softly. "But make no mistake, we were ready." The Regalian's voice trembled. "And now?" The human smiled. "Now, we water the rose." They gestured to the garden beyond, a sea of color, of earth plants grown from soil brought across the stars. Among the petals and leaves, thorns still remained, sharp, honest, waiting. In the end, the Confederation realized the truth. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one with the biggest ships or the loudest threats. It was the one that had learned to hide its teeth behind a smile, and meant every word of that smile, even the polite ones.